Hello, it's Craig here. With the changes in version 1.03, Elden Ring has brought plenty of balanced patches, fixing broken stuff like Varre's Helice with Death Blight or the Earth Tree Great Shield. One of the major fixes was arcane scaling, and I'm going to go through all arcane scaling weapons in this video so that you can see which weapons that was previously disregarded due to the lack of damage scaling is now a viable option for an arcane build. Okay, first up, let's just get this out of the way. Rivers of Blood is a weapon that was already decent before. This one will definitely be quite meta, especially with the Moonveil poise damage nerf. No, the Moonveil didn't get any damage nerf, but the amount of poise damage it deals is decreased if they only hit you with a beam. The weapon art Corpse Powder is extremely quick and does decent damage. It is also a weapon art with 3 stages, so you can actually stop using the weapon art if you don't keep attacking, meaning it is quite flexible. Arcane also scales bleed build-up, so I see this weapon being used a lot more in both PvE and PvP. Next we have Varre's Bouquet, which is a small hammer with barely any range. You probably guessed it, but this one is garbage with or without the arcane scaling. I don't think there's much to say. Blood Tax isn't especially good, and if you want a bleed weapon, there are plenty of other choices. Okay, I'm going to talk about these two swords together because of how similar they are. The Regalia of Eochaid and Marais' Executioner sword. Neither of them can be infused with an Ash of War, so as you can see, the Regalia of Eochaid scales better with dexterity, while the Marais' Executioner sword scales better with strength. The weapon art is the same, which is Eochaid's Dancing Blade. However, this weapon art isn't particularly powerful, and neither of these weapons have bleed build-up as a passive effect, which is a great detriment as an arcane weapon. These currently aren't strong picks for PvP, but I can definitely see them used for fun in PvE. The Reduvia dagger. The thing about a dagger is it doesn't have a great range on its swings as a main hand weapon. The weapon art can cover some range aspect, but the weapon art's bleed buildup does not scale to arcane. Therefore, I don't think this dagger will be particularly good in PvP. However, you will definitely see an improvement in performance in PvE, where this dagger was already a great choice. Mohgwyn's Sacred Spear is an arcane weapon that the community seems to have picked up quickly with a new patch. With arcane scaling now in place, Blood Boon Ritual does insanely high damage. Yes, it doesn't have a very fast animation, but it works great in narrower areas for invasions. For duels, I don't think you'll get that much use out of it versus great opponents because they'll just dodge out of it or punish you for casting the weapon art. But for invasions, it is very easy to like use a corner or your terrain for your advantage, so you have enough time to cast Bloodboon Ritual, and you can easily wipe people 1-on-3. This weapon is definitely much more viable in both PvP and PvE post-patch. Clinging Bone is, well, something let's just quickly get over. Arcane scaling with no bleed build-up passive and a horrendously slow weapon art? Yeah, no. Poleblade is an axe that has a base A arcane scaling and can reach S with upgrades. It scales arcane really well at the cost of not having any bleed build-up. The only shame is you can't apply Ash of War to this weapon, so you can't change out wall strikes, which I personally don't really like. I can definitely see this weapon used in PvE for some raw arcane damage builds, just raw damage builds instead of going for the bleed, but it won't be a popular pick by a long shot in PvP. Ripple Crescent Halberd is the Halberd version of Poleblade. Although it starts at a B scaling, it also ends up with a S scaling in Arcane when fully upgraded. Personally, I think Spinning Slash is a much more usable choice in PvP, and Halberds have a longer reach. However, without the bleed, I'd still put this weapon as a PvE only weapon. Bloody Helice was already a great weapon, although most people were building more decks than Arcane for this weapon. Dyna's Finesse is a great tool to dodge attacks in PvP, and it also allows for counter-attack follow-up, which deals quite a bit of damage. Furthermore, as a thrusting weapon, you can attack with Helice behind a shield too. You will definitely be seeing more of this weapon in PvP, and I will definitely be playing around with this weapon for my Arcane build. If Bloodhound Step ever gets a nerf, this weapon's weapon art will be a very powerful one. Morgott's Cursed Sword has 35 dex requirement, so you are locked into a dex Arcane build. Cursed Blood Slice is a nice weapon art for PvE, even though it does cost quite a bit of faith. But I don't think you'll be seeing this weapon in PvP, since the weapon art isn't good enough, and for bleed weapons you have better choices. Eleonora's Poleblade looks like the newest toy for a two-handing bleed build. Right now you can use Gargoyle's Twin Blade with Seppuku and Blood Infusion for a pretty strong Twin Blade build. Eleonora's Poleblade can be used with Bloodflame Blade Incantation for more damage instead. Bloodblade Dance is also not a bad weapon art as it hits many times for a good bleed build-up. One thing I want to note about Twin Blade is dual-wielding Twin Blades actually makes the Twin Blade moveset worse. These blades have the range of a short sword or a dagger, so the biggest upside to Twin Blades is two-handing them for their speedy moveset for stronger bleed build-ups. Lastly, we have the Glintstone Staff and the Sacred Seal that scales to Arcane. To put it simply, if you're going for an Arcane hybrid build, these are potential options, but most of the time if you're focusing on just intelligence sorceries or faith incantations, just go with the regular Glintstone Staffs or Sacred Seals. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.